Dedication. C. Pliny Secundus to his friend Titus Vespasian. This treatise on natural history, a novel work in Roman literature, which I have just completed, I have taken the liberty to dedicate to you, most gracious one emperor, an appellation peculiarly suitable to you, while, on account of his age, that of grade is more appropriate to your father. For still thou ne'er wouldst quite despise the trifles that I write too. If I may be allowed to shelter myself under the example of Catullus, my fellow countryman 3, a military turn, which you well understand. For he, as you know, when his napkins have been changed for, expressed himself a little harshly, from his anxiety to show his friendship for his dear little Veranius and Fabius 5. At the same time this my importunity may affect, what you complained of my not having done in another too forward epistle of mine, it will put upon record, and let all the world know, with what kindness you exercise the imperial dignity. You, who have had the honor of a triumph, and of the censorship, have been 6 times consul, and have shared in the tribunate, and, what is still more honorable, whilst you held them in conjunction with your father, you have presided over the equestrian order, and been the prefect of the Praetorian 6. All this you have done for the service of the Republic, and, at the same time, have regarded me as a fellow soldier and a messmate. Nor has the extent of your prosperity produced any change in you, except that it has given you the power of doing good to the utmost of your wishes. And whilst all these circumstances increase the veneration which other persons feel for you, with respect to myself, they have made me so bold as to wish to become more familiar. You must, therefore, place this to your own account, and blame yourself for any fault of this kind that I may commit. But, although I have laid aside my blushes 7, I have not gained my object, for you still awe me, and keep me at a distance, by the majesty of your understanding. In no one does the force of eloquence and of tribunician oratory blaze out more powerfully. With what glowing language do you thunder forth the praises of your father? How dearly do you love your brother? How admirable is your talent for poetry? What a fertility of genius do you possess, so as to enable you to imitate your brother 8. But who is there that is bold enough to form an estimate on these points, if he is to be judged by you, and, more especially, if you are challenged to do so? For the case of those who merely publish their works is very different from that of those who expressly dedicate them to you. In the former case I might say, Emperor, why do you read these things? They are written only for the common people, for farmers or mechanics, or for those who have nothing else to do. Why do you trouble yourself with them? Indeed, when I undertook this work, I did not expect that you would sit in judgment upon me 9. I considered your situation much too elevated for you to descend to such an office. Besides, we possess the right of openly rejecting the opinion of men of learning. Tullius himself, whose genius is beyond all competition, uses this privilege, and, remarkable as it may appear, employs an advocate in his own defense. I do not write for very learned people. I do not wish my works to be read by Manius Persius, but by Junius Congus 10. And if Lucilius, who first introduced the satirical style 11, applied such a remark to himself, and if Cicero thought proper to borrow it, and that more especially in his treatise, De Republica, how much reason have I to do so, who have such a judge to defend myself against? And by this dedication I have deprived myself of the benefit of challenge 12, for it is a very different thing whether a person has a judge given him by lot, or whether he voluntarily selects one, and we always make more preparation for an invited guest than for one that comes in unexpectedly. When the candidates for office, during the heat of the canvass, deposited the fine 13 in the hands of Cato, that determined opposer of bribery, rejoicing as he did in his being rejected from what he considered to be foolish honors, they professed to do this out of respect to his integrity, the greatest glory which a man could attain. It was on this occasion that Cicero uttered the noble ejaculation, "How happy are you, Marcus Porcius, of whom no one dares to ask what is dishonorable." 14. When L. Scipio Asiaticus appealed to the tribunes, among whom was Gracchus, he expressed full confidence that he should obtain an acquittal, even from a judge who was his enemy. Hence it follows that he who appoints his own judge must absolutely submit to the decision. This choice is therefore termed an appeal. 15. I am well aware that, placed as you are in the highest station, and gifted with the most splendid eloquence and the most accomplished mind, even those who come to pay their respects to you, do it with a kind of veneration. On this account I ought to be careful that what is dedicated to you should be worthy of you. But the country people, and, indeed, some whole nations offer milk to the gods 16, and those who cannot procure frankincense substitute in its place salted cakes, for the gods are not dissatisfied when they are worshipped by every one to the best of his ability. But my temerity will appear the greater by the consideration that these volumes, which I dedicate to you, are of such inferior importance. For they do not admit of the display of genius, nor, indeed, is mine one of the highest order. They admit of no excursions, nor orations, nor discussions, nor of any wonderful adventures, nor any variety of transactions, nor, from the barrenness of the matter, of anything particularly pleasant in the narration, or agreeable to the reader. The nature of things, and life as it actually exists, are described in them, and often the lowest department of it, so that, in very many cases, I am obliged to use rude and foreign, or even barbarous terms, and these often require to be introduced by a kind of preface. And, besides this, my road is not a beaten track, nor one which the mind is much disposed to travel over. There is no one among us who has ever attempted it, nor is there any one individual among the Greeks who has treated of all the topics. Most of us seek for nothing but amusement in our studies, while others are fond of subjects that are of excessive subtlety and completely involved in obscurity. My object is to treat of all those things which the Greeks include in the Encyclopedia 17, which, however, are either not generally known or are rendered dubious from our ingenious conceits. And there are other matters which many writers have given so much in detail that we quite loathe them. It is, indeed, no easy task to give novelty to what is old, and authority to what is new, brightness to what is become tarnished, and light to what is obscure, to render what is slighted acceptable, and what is doubtful worthy of our confidence, to give to all in natural manner, and to each its peculiar nature. It is sufficiently honorable and glorious to have been willing even to make the attempt, although it should prove unsuccessful. And, indeed, I am of opinion that the studies of those are more especially worthy of our regard, who, after having overcome all difficulties, prefer the useful office of assisting others to the mere gratification of giving pleasure, and this is what I have already done in some of my former works. I confess it surprises me that T. Livius, so celebrated an author as he is, in one of the books of his history of the city from its origin, should begin with this remark: I have now obtained a sufficient reputation, so that I might put an end to my work, did not my restless mind require to be supported by employment. 18. Certainly he ought to have composed this work, not for his own glory, but for that of the Roman name, and of the people who were the conquerors of all other nations. It would have been more meritorious to have persevered in his labors from his love of the work than from the gratification which it afforded himself, and to have accomplished it, not for his own sake, but for that of the Roman people. I have included in 30-619 books 20,000 topics, all worthy of attention, for, as Domitius Piso 20 says, we ought to make not merely books, but valuable collections, gained by the perusal of about 2,000 volumes, of which a few only are in the hands of the studious, on account of the obscurity of the subjects, procured by the careful perusal of 100 select authors. 21. And to these I have made considerable additions of things, which were either not known to my predecessors, or which have been lately discovered. Nor can I doubt but that there still remain many things which I have omitted, for I am a mere mortal, and one that has many occupations. I have, therefore, been obliged to compose this work at interrupted intervals, indeed during the night, so that you will find that I have not been idle even during this period. The day I devote to you, exactly portioning out my sleep to the necessity of my health, and contenting myself with this reward, that while we are musing 22 on these subjects, according to the remark of Varro, we are adding to the length of our lives, for life properly consists in being awake. In consideration of these circumstances and these difficulties, I dare promise nothing, but you have done me the most essential service in permitting me to dedicate my work to you. Nor does this merely give a sanction to it, but it determines its value, for things are often conceived to be of great value, solely because they are consecrated in temples. I have given a full account of all your family, your father, yourself, and your brother, in a history of our own times, beginning where Aufidius Bassus concludes 23. You will ask, where is it? It has been long completed and its accuracy confirmed 24, but I have determined to commit the charge of it to my heirs, lest I should have been suspected, during my lifetime, of having been unduly influenced by ambition. By this means I confer an obligation on those who occupy the same ground with myself, and also on posterity, who, I am aware, will contend with me, as I have done with my predecessors. You may judge of my taste from my having inserted, in the beginning of my book, the names of the authors that I have consulted. For I consider it to be courteous and to indicate an ingenuous modesty, to acknowledge the sources whence we have derived assistance, and not to act as most of those have done whom I have examined. For I must inform you, that in comparing various authors with each other, I have discovered that some of the most grave and of the latest writers have transcribed, word for word, from former works, without making any acknowledgment, not avowedly rivaling them, in the manner of Virgil, or with the candor of Cicero, who, in his treatise, De Republica 25, professes to coincide in opinion with Plato, and in his essay on consolation for his daughter, says that he follows Crantor, and, in his Offices 26, Panaetius, volumes, which, as you well know, ought not merely to be always in our hands, but to be learned by heart. For it is indeed the mark of a perverted mind in a bad disposition, to prefer being caught in a theft to returning what we have borrowed, especially when we have acquired capital, by usurious interest. 27. The Greeks were wonderfully happy in their titles. One work they called Kappa Hetero Omicron Nu, which means that it was as sweet as a honeycomb, another Kappa Rho Alpha Alpha Mu Alpha Lambda Theta Epsilon Alpha, or Cornucopii, so that you might expect to get even a draught of pigeon's milk from it. 28. Then they have their flowers, their muses, magazines, manuals, gardens, pictures, and sketches. 29, all of them titles for which a man might be tempted even to forfeit his bail. But when you enter upon the works, O ye gods and goddesses, how full of emptiness! Our duller countrymen have merely their antiquities, or their examples, or their arts. I think one of the most humorous of them has his Nocturnal Studies 30, a term employed by Baculus, a name which he richly deserved. 31. Varro, indeed, is not much behind him, when he calls one of his satires a trick and a half, and another turning the tables. 32. Diodorus was the first among the Greeks who laid aside this trifling manner and named his history the Library. 33. Apion, the grammarian, indeed, he whom Tiberius Caesar called the trumpeter of the world, but would rather seem to be the bell of the town, crier. 34, supposed that every one to whom he inscribed any work would thence acquire immortality. I do not regret not having given my work a more fanciful title. That I may not, however, appear to inveigh so completely against the Greeks, I should wish to be considered under the same point of view with those inventors of the arts of painting and sculpture, of whom you will find an account in these volumes, whose works, although they are so perfect that we are never satisfied with admiring them, are inscribed with a temporary title. 35, such as Apelles, or Polycletus, was doing this, implying that the work was only commenced and still imperfect, and that the artist might benefit by the criticisms that were made on it and alter any part that required it, if he had not been prevented by death. It is also a great mark of their modesty, that they inscribed their works as if they were the last which they had executed, and as still in hand at the time of their death. I think there are but 3 works of art which are inscribed positively with the words, such a one executed this. Of these I shall give an account in the proper place. In these cases it appears that the artist felt the most perfect satisfaction with his work, and hence these pieces have excited the envy of every one. I, indeed, freely admit that much may be added to my works, not only to this, but to all which I have published. By this admission I hope to escape from the carping critics. 36, and I have the more reason to say this, because I hear that there are certain Stoics and logicians. 37, and also Epicureans, from the grammarians. 38, I expected as much, who are big with something against the little work I published on grammar. 39, and that they have been carrying these abortions for 10 years together, a longer pregnancy this than the elephant. Bess. 40. But I well know that even a woman once wrote against Theophrastus, a man so eminent for his eloquence that he obtained his name, which signifies the divine speaker 41, and that from this circumstance originated the proverb of choosing a tree to hang oneself 42. I cannot refrain from quoting the words of Cato the censor, which are so pertinent to this point. It appears from them that even Cato, who wrote commentaries on military discipline 43, and who had learned the military art under Africanus, or rather under Hannibal, for he could not endure Africanus 44, who, when he was his general, had borne away the triumph from him, that Cato, I say, was open to the attacks of such as caught at reputation for themselves by detracting from the merits of others. And what does he say in his book? I know that when I shall publish what I have written, there will be many who will do all they can to depreciate it, and, especially, such as are themselves void of all merit, but I let their harangues glide by me. Nor was the remark of Plancus 45 a bad one, when Asinius Pollio 46 was said to be preparing an oration against him, which was to be published either by himself or his children, after the death of Plancus, in order that he might not be able to answer it. It is only ghosts that fight with the dead. This gave such a blow to the oration, that in the opinion of the learned generally, nothing was ever thought more scandalous. Feeling myself, therefore, secure against these vile slanderers 47, a name elegantly composed by Cato, to express their slanderous and vile disposition, for what other object have they, but to wrangle and breed quarrels, I will proceed with my projected work. And because the public good requires that ye should be spared as much as possible from all trouble, I have subjoined to this epistle the contents of each of the following books 48, and have used my best endeavors to prevent your being obliged to read them all through. And this, which was done for your benefit, will also serve the same purpose for others, so that any one may search for what he wishes, and may know where to find it. This has been already done among us by Valerius Soranus, in his work which he entitled, On Mysteries 49. The first book is the preface of the work, dedicated to Titus Vespasian Caesar. The second is on the world, the elements, and the heavenly bodies 50. The third, fourth, fifth, and sixth books are on geography, in which is contained an account of the situation of the different countries, the inhabitants, the seas, towns, harbors, mountains, rivers, and dimensions, and the various tribes, some of which still exist and others have disappeared. The seventh is on man, and the inventions of man. The eighth on the various kinds of land animals. The ninth on aquatic animals. The 10th on the various kinds of birds. The 11th on insects. The 12th on odoriferous plants. The 13th on exotic trees. The 14th on vines. The 15th on fruit trees. The 16th on forest trees. The 17th on plants raised in nurseries or gardens. The 18th on the nature of fruits and the cerealia, and the pursuits of the husbandman. The 19th on flax, broom 51, and gardening. The 20th on the cultivated plants that are proper for food and for medicine. The 21st on flowers and plants that are used for making garlands. The 22nd on garlands and medicines made from plants. The 23rd on medicines made from wine and from cultivated trees. The 24th on medicines made from forest trees. The 25th on medicines made from wild plants. The 26th on new diseases and medicines made, for certain diseases, from plants. The 27th on some other plants and medicines. The 28th on medicines procured from man and from large animals. The 29th on medical authors, and on medicines from other animals. The 30th on magic, and medicines for certain parts of the body. The 31st on medicines from aquatic animals. The 32nd on the other properties of aquatic animals. The 33rd on gold and silver. The 34th on copper and lead, and the workers of copper. The 35th on painting, colors, and painters. The 36th on marbles and stones. The 37th on gems. 1. Jucundissum. It is not easy to find an epithet in our language which will correctly express the meaning of the original, affectionate, and familiar, at the same time that it is sufficiently dignified and respectful. 2. Lambs trans, carn. 4. Of the original. 3. Conterraneous, we have no word in English which expresses the idea intended by the original, and which is, at the same time, a military term. There is indeed some reason to doubt whether the word now inserted in the text was the one employed by the author. See the remarks of M. Alexander, in Lem. I. 3, also an observation in Sigolino's dissertation on the native country of Pliny, Valby, 8. 4. Permutatus prioribus cetabis, Carn. 12, 14, 25. 7. See the notes in Lamb's Trans. Pages 135 and 149. 5. These names in the original are Veraniolus and Fabulus, which are supposed to have been changed from Veranius and Fabius, as terms of familiarity and endearment. See Poinçonnet, I. 24, and Lemaire, I. 4. 6. The narrative of Suetonius may serve to illustrate the observation of Pliny, Triumphavit, Titus, cum pater, censurant Gecidina. Idem collega et in tribunitia potestate, et in septem consulatibus fiut. Receptic ad se prop omnium officiorum cura, cum patris nomini et epistoles ixi dictaret, edia dicta conscriberat, orationesque in senata reciterat etiam quaestores vice, prefecturem quoque praetoriae suspit, numquam ad id tempus, nisi abiquite Romano, administratum. 8, 5. 7. Proficui facium. This appears to have been a proverbial expression among the Romans. Cicero, Tusk. Quis. 3, 41, employs Boes Perfiquisti and Martial, 11. 27, 7, Proficit frontem, in the same sense. 8. Suetonius speaks of Domitian's taste for poetry as a part of his habitual dissimulation. 8. 2. See also the notes of Poinçonnet, I. 26, and of Alexander, in Lemaire, I. 351. 9. Non eris in hoc albo, see the note of Alexander, in Lemaire, I. 8. A passage in Quintilian, 12. 4. May serve to illustrate this use of the term album, quorum alii se ad album ac rubricas transtolerant. 10. It appears that the passage in which Cicero makes this quotation from Lucilius is not in the part of his treatise De Republica which was lately discovered by Angelus Maius, Alexander in Lemaire, I. 9. Cicero refers to this remark of Lucilius in 2 of his other works, although with a variation in the expression and in the individual specified, to orat. 2, 6, and de fin I. 3. 11. Caprimus condidit styli nasum. 12. Sed haec ego mihi nunc patrocinia adami nuncipation. 13. Pecunias deponerant. Adjacent, I. 11, remarks on these words, Cavitari volbent ambitu alienissimi, pecuniam apud sanctum alicum virum deponbent, qua silis et multerenter, si unquam hujus criminis manifesti firent. 14. This expression is not found in any of the works of Cicero which are now extant, nor, indeed, is it certain that it was anything more than a remark made in conversation. 15. Provocatio, calling forth. 16. Horace, Epist. 2. 1, 143, Ovid, Fast. 4, 746 in the 121, and Tibullus, I. 1. 26 and 2. 5, 37, refer to the offerings of milk made by the country people to their rural deities. 17. Id est, artium et doctrinarum omnium circulus, Alexander in Lem. I. 14. 18. These words are not found in any of the books of Livy now extant. We may conclude that they were introduced into the latter part of his work. 19. Quem nunc primum historii Pliniani librum vacumis, hic non unmerator, quod sit operis index. Harduin in Lem. I. 16. 20. Nothing is known of Domitius Piso, either as an author or an individual. 21. The names of these authors will be found, arranged by Harduin alphabetically, with a brief account of them and their works, in Lem. I. 157 ed seek. We have nearly the same list in Valpy, page 4903. 22. Musinimer. We learn from Harduin, Lem. I. 17, that there is some doubt as to the word employed by our author, whether it was mu, cinema or muginimer, as should be disposed to adopt the former, as being, according to the remark of Turnebus, verbum amusis deductum. 23. A fina fidei bassi, as Alexander remarks, finus automa fidei bassi intelligendus est non mors aegis, sed tempus ad quat suas ipsi produxerat historias. Quadnum illa dignoramus. Lem. I. 18. For an account of Aufidius Bassus we are referred to the catalogue of Harduin, but his name does not appear there. Quintilian, X. 1, informs us that he wrote an account of the Germanic War. 24. Jam pridem peracta sensitor. 25. This sentiment is not found in that portion of the treatise which has been lately published by Angelus Maius. Alexander in Lemaire, I. 19. 26. The following is probably the passage in the offices to which Pliny refers, Panaetius Igitur, Cassine controversia de officiis accuratissimum disputavit, quemth nos, correction quadam exhibita, petissimum secuti sans. 3. 2. 27. Cum praesertim sors fiat ex usura. The commentators and translators have differed respecting the interpretation of this passage. I have given what appears to me the obvious meaning of the words. 28. Lac gallinaceum, proverbium de re singulari etiad modum rara, according to Harduin, who quotes a parallel passage from Petronius, Lemaire, I. 21. 29. The titles in the original are given in Greek. I have inserted in the text the words which most nearly resemble them, and which have been employed by modern authors. 30. Lucubratio. 31. The pun in the original cannot be preserved in the translation. The English reader may conceive the name by Baculus to correspond to our surname Jolly. 32. Sesculces and flextabula, literally, Ulysses and a hath and bend table. 33. Beta iota beta lambda iota omicron theta kappa eta. 34. Symbola mundi, and publici fami tympanum. 35. Pendenti titulo, as Harduin explains it, canondum absolutum opus significaret, verum ad hoc pendra, the lo imperfectum. Lemaire, I. 26. 36. Homeromastigi. 37. Dialectici. By this term our author probably meant to designate those critics who were disposed to dwell upon minute verbal distinctions, dialecticarum captionem amantes, according to Harduin, Lem. I. 28. 38. Quod artigerum amantissimi, e quod aemulatio inter illos acerbissima. Alexander in Lemaire, I. 28. 39. Pliny the Younger, in one of his letters, 3. 5, where he enumerates all his uncle's publications, informs us that he wrote a piece of criticism in 8 books concerning ambiguity of expression. Melmoth's Pliny, I. 136. 40. The ancients had very exaggerated notions respecting the period of the elephant's pregnancy. Our author, in a subsequent part of his work, 8. 10, says, Decem annis gestur vulgus existimat, Aristoteles Biennio. 41. His real name was Tertimus, but in consequence of the beauty of his style, he acquired the appellation by which he is generally known from the words theta epsilon omicron phi sigma iota. Cicero on various occasions refers to him, Brutus, 121, Orator, 17, et alibi. 42. Suspendio jam quira mortem portera homines vitae renunciare, cum tantum licentiae, vel femini, vel imperati homines sumant, ut in doctissimos scribent, Harduin in Lemaire, I. 29. We learn from Cicero, the Nat dur. I. 33, that the name of this female was Leontium, sed meretricula etium Leontium contra Theophraston scriberi ossa sit. 43a. Gellius, 7. 4, refers to this work and gives an extract from it. 44. The hostility which Cato bore to Scipio Africanus is mentioned by Livy, 38. 54, and by Corn. Nepos, Cato, I. 45. Lucius Minacius Plancus took a conspicuous part in the political intrigues of the times and was especially noted for his follies and extravagance. 46. Asinius Pollio is a name which stands high in Roman literature, according to the remark of Alexander, vir magnus fiat, prono tamen ad autric tandem ingenio, quod arduant aegis cum Ciceroni simultates, Lemaire, I. 30. This hostile feeling toward Cicero is supposed to have proceeded from envy and mortification, because he was unable to attain the same eminence in the art of oratory with his illustrious rival. See Harduin's Index Auctorum, in Lemare, I. 168. 47. Vita Ligators. 48. The Table of Contents, which occupies no less than 124 pages in Lemare's edition, I have omitted, in consequence of its length. The object which the author proposed to effect by the table of contents will be gained more completely by an alphabetical index. 49. Epsilon pi omicron pi tau omega nu. For an account of Valerius Soranus, see Harduin's Index Auctorum, in Lemare, I. 217. 50. To the end of each book of the natural history is appended, in the original, a copious list of references to the sources from which the author derived his information. These are very numerous. In the second book they amount to 45, in the third to 35, in the fourth to 53, in the fifth to 60, in the sixth to 54, and they are in the same proportion in the remaining books. 51. Spartum. This plant was used to make bands for the vines and cables for ships.